Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Traveling in a New Vegan World online summit. And I'm really excited to be here on this chat today. I'm Bridie from World Vegan Travel, and I'm here today with Kim Giovacco. Tell me, Kim, how do I say it? We practiced this before.
Giovacco.
Giovacco. Oh my goodness. Thank you. And I'm very excited to be here to talk about a very interesting place. And I want to remind everybody that you are able to interact. We have a live chat connected with this talk, so you can ask any questions in the chat, and Kim will be there to answer any questions that you might have about this topic. All right. So, Kim, why don't you introduce yourself and before we get started with the topic today?
Sure. Thanks, Bridie. I'm Kim Giovacco. I run Veg Johnson Journeys, and normally my business is doing tours in Europe, but I'm starting to do more in the US now. And I've actually been doing some things in the Asheville area as well. And so I moved to Asheville 4 years ago, and I absolutely love it. And just wanted to let our participants know about this vegan-friendly haven.
Fantastic. Great.
Could you share your screen, Bridie, please?
Absolutely.
So Asheville is a very beautiful city of about 100,000 people. And it's located in Western North Carolina in the mountains. It's pretty much surrounded by mountains on three sides, and the French Broad River on the other side. And this is one of the oldest rivers in the world, actually, maybe the second or third oldest river. And so the city's surrounded by the Blue Ridge Mountains, which are part of the Appalachian chain. And they're called the Blue Ridge because they're often covered by a lovely blue haze, especially when you see the mountains in the distance. So next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about 5 reasons why you might want to visit Asheville. And the first reason is the Blue Ridge Parkway. And it's one of the most scenic drives in the US, and it runs right through the heart of Asheville. Next slide, please. And that's just kind of a photo of what some of the curves look like. The speed limit is, I think, throughout just about 45 miles an hour. Next slide, please. So the Parkway is often called America's favorite drive, and it's the most visited unit of the National Park System since it opened in 1946. And it connects Shenandoah National Park, which is in Virginia, with Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. Although the parkway doesn't actually enter Tennessee, it ends in the southern part in Cherokee, North Carolina. And it's 469 miles long, and it has so many turnoffs or pullouts, so where you can just pull over and have these gorgeous views. And if you stopped at all of those, it would take a very long time to travel the whole parkway. Um, and one of the things that I really like is that, you could just be in Asheville doing your daily business or running errands or something, and, just get on the parkway for a few miles instead of taking the interstate. And during the fall, it's really beautiful with the foliage. Um, Asheville actually has one of the longest foliage seasons in the US because it has so many different elevations. So I would say pretty much um, from the middle of October till the middle of November, you were able to see some really good color somewhere. Next slide, please. So Mount Mitchell, which is the highest peak east of the Mississippi River, can be accessed from the parkway, and you can drive up part of it and then just walk maybe the last 10 minutes or so. Um, and there's a really nice lookout at the top. Next slide, please. And Linville Falls is the most popular waterfall in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's a three-tiered waterfall that plunges into a gorge, which is called the Grand Canyon of the Southern Appalachians. And there's three hiking trails to access the falls, ranging from easy to strenuous. Next slide, please. So that's a photo of the falls, and it's very cool because down at the bottom the water is just kind of churning in all different directions. Next slide, please. So the second reason to visit Asheville is because of the vegan scene. And I have to say, the first year that I moved here, I became active in the vegan community pretty quickly and went to a lot of events. And within a couple months, was asked to be on the board of the Vegan Society. And basically, just from showing up at various events, I met at least 100 vegans the first year that I was living here. So I really feel like I'm in a kind of vegan bubble. I mean, my heart really goes out to people that don't have vegan friends near them, um, because here I mean, even in cities that I've lived in, I've never experienced a vegan scene like this. Um, and it's not so much that we have a lot of vegan restaurants here because it is only 100,000 people, but it's the communities, or the vegan communities. So we have a lot of opportunities for activism, circus protests and things like that. And then just a lot of social events. So there's some meetup groups, and we often have pop-ups. So maybe at a brewery, there'll be something like a vegan barbecue cook-off or a vegan mac and cheese cook-off. And yeah, just or fundraisers for different animal sanctuaries. So just a lot of fun events like that. And before COVID, there were probably 3 events every week. I mean, it was really exhausting if you wanted to try to go to everything. Um, and now, uh, things have definitely scaled back a lot, but we're pretty lucky that the climate here is fairly mild. So even right now, uh, the past couple weeks, we've still been able to, have events outdoors and meet outdoors and things. Next slide, please. So these are the vegan restaurants that are in Asheville. Plant is pretty well known throughout the US. It's upscale, it's only open for dinner. Uh, pretty small, only about 12 tables, so it can be difficult to get reservations, but definitely some really interesting food there. And Rosetta's Kitchen has been around for a long time. I'm guessing maybe 20 years. Um, it has great Southern comfort food. It was vegetarian before COVID, and then during the pandemic, it became completely vegan, which is really cool. And another thing I really like about Rosetta's is it's attached to something called the Bucci Bar. So we have a local kombucha maker that's a women owned company, and they have about 7 flavors of kombucha on tap in this Bucci bar. And so you can get a flight of kombucha, which is really cool. And they're also making cocktails with kombucha there. And then there's Pulp and Sprout, which is mostly raw and a juice bar, but really creative food. And recently, this coffee house called Gallivant Coffee opened. It has definitely become one of my most favorite coffee shops anywhere. They have really creative coffee drinks. Some of them are using locally foraged herbs and things, and the drinks change seasonally. And then all of the baked goods are vegan and are made in house. Things like scones and hand pies and muffins and vegan Pop Tarts. And during COVID, 2 food trucks recently opened. One is called the Trashy Vegan. We also just found out that they're opening a completely vegan donut shop, and another food truck called Wicked Vegans. Next slide, please. So this just happens to be a photo of the ice cream that's made in-house at Plant for one of their desserts. Next slide, please. So for vegetarian restaurants, we have Laughing Seed, which has been around for a long time. I think the first time I visited Asheville was 25 years ago, and I remember going to that restaurant then. And we have Dobra Tea House, which appears in a few other cities. There's one in Burlington, Vermont, and a couple other places I've been to. Real relaxing tea house atmosphere. They have a tea menu that must be about 50 pages long, and it's vegetarian with a lot of vegan options and a lot of choices for dessert, like little things that are mostly raw desserts, but really tasty. And another food truck that opened during the pandemic is called Smoke and Onion, and it's basically vegan. They just have one option that happens to be vegetarian. Next slide, please. So then for options, we have quite a few. This is a very small sample. I would say that just about every restaurant in Asheville has a vegan option. That would even include the barbecue joints. Barbecue is pretty popular here. So this place, Ultra Coffee Bar, is actually vegan owned, and they have a separate vegan menu. And I noticed when I started going recently that it seems like the whole bakery turned vegan all of a sudden, and they have a lot of options. Um, Simple Cafe and Juice Bar, same thing. It's about half vegan. This Blue Dream Curry House for their entrees, they're for the vegan options, they're using a locally made plant meat, which is from No Evil Foods. Um, and then Asheville Sandwich Company, 9 Mile, which is a Jamaican Caribbean restaurant. That's a really good place to go if you're going with Omni people. There's 3 locations in town. Haiwa Shikoda, which is a Japanese place with a ton of vegan options. And then Bim Berry Bon. very high quality. The man that owns it is just an amazing chef. He has, I think, 3 restaurants in Asheville, and there's a lot of vegan options, and the whole restaurant happens to be gluten free as well.
Kim, this information is absolutely fantastic. Will our participants, our attendees, be able to download this presentation so
I
they can have access to it?
Yeah, I have a better idea. When we get toward the end, if people want to email me, I can send them a vegan guide that I actually made for my neighbors. Um, you might know that I live in a tiny house community, and it turns out that almost 20% of our residents now are vegan. And I took it upon myself to make a kind of vegan guide for when new neighbors come. And so I'm happy to share that. It has a little more than a tourist would need, because I talk about grocery stores that are vegan friendly as well. But I think anybody would find it pretty useful.
Amazing, fantastic.
Next slide, please. So our vegan community, we have the Asheville Vegan Society, and if you go to their website, you can get what's called the Asheville Vegan Discount Card, and it's $15 for a year, and they'll mail it to you. And pretty much all the vegan restaurants, and then many of the ones that have vegan options, will offer a 5 to 15% discount. So, like if you just go to Plant, the upscale restaurant, one time, and I think their discount is 15%, that would definitely cover the cost of the card. Uh, so then on Meetup, the most active group is called Mountain Vegans. And I'm giving this information because a lot of times I see that visitors join these groups, just for when they're going to be in town. And Mountain Vegans has a terrific organizer, and they usually do things like uh, a dining out in conjunction with a hike, or a dining out with some kind of cultural event. And even during COVID, there's been something going on, I would say once a week on average. They've all been out, well, mostly outside activities, but for people that are comfortable eating inside restaurants, there's also been indoor dining outs. And then on Facebook, the group to join would be Asheville Herbivores. And I also see a lot of travelers in that group that are just asking for suggestions while they're in town. And it's also a very active group. Next slide, please. So I offer an Asheville vegan food tour on request. I don't offer it on a regular basis because I'm often out of town, but it can be requested through my website, Veg Johnson Journeys, and it's basically a private 4 to 6 hour tour, and it can be customized. So if someone doesn't like a certain type of cuisine, or if someone is gluten free, that's no problem. Um, it's not a walking tour, it's in a vehicle, because Asheville kind of has 2 parts to it, the downtown area and West Asheville. And in my opinion, the part that's called West Asheville is actually the most vegan friendly part of town. So we go to those 2 areas, and then we actually have an animal sanctuary that's within Asheville city limits. And usually the people on the tour like to go there as well. Um, and then when we were speaking about the vegan guide before, you could email me here, and I'd be happy to send out the guide to you. Next slide, please. So this is just a photo of one of the vegan food tours that I did. Well, this was before COVID, and one of the places we go to is a very small, super vegan friendly market. And I don't know how they do it, but I've found things in this market that I don't see in any other stores. And this was the very first place that I saw Violife cheese in the US, even going back like 3 years ago. Next slide, please. So the third reason to visit Asheville would be the number of animal sanctuaries that we have in the surrounding area. Next slide, please. I'm not sure why so many have sprouted up around here, and many of them just in the past couple of years. Um, I will say something that's sad about living around here that I had never seen any other place where I've lived is that a couple times a week I will see transport trucks on the highway. Normally, when I see them, they're empty. Not that that makes it any easier, but I've just, I never saw that when I lived in the Boston area. Um, I learned after moving here that Asheville actually has more pigs than residents. And so there is a lot of factory farming. It's really not in the Asheville area, it's more in the eastern part of the state, but it's definitely something I'm always aware about. Um, and I just love having all of these really sweet animal sanctuaries around here. So there's quite a few that are within 1 hour of Asheville. This first one, Animal Haven, is, like I said, in the city limits, and they just celebrated their 21st anniversary. It's open 5 days a week. There's no appointment needed. You can just let yourself in, which is so great. And they have a very nice, good sized thrift store. And right on the property, that's where I take all of my donations and all my neighbors' donations whenever I have things to get rid of. They happen to have their cow that was born without eyeballs. They rescued her about 3 years ago when she was only 4 days old, and she's fully grown now. And my next favorite sanctuary is located an hour from Asheville on a beautiful piece of property with a ton of pecan trees, and it's called Changing Hearts Farm. It just opened a few years ago. And they also happen to have a blind calf who they just rescued a couple months ago. Some kayakers found him in a river, and he's doing really well. He gained a lot of weight just the first month or two that he was at the sanctuary. They have a lot of volunteers that sit with him in his paddock and that lead him around, and he has fit in really well with the other animals, like their a sheep that they have there, and the goats. And then, like I said, there's about a half dozen others that can be visited by appointment. Next slide, please. Uh, this just happens to be one of the photos at Animal Haven. I like this sanctuary as well because I noticed that they have a lot of school groups that go there just for a learning experience, or if the students are older, I've also often seen them volunteering there. Next slide, please. This is Elsa, the blind calf, when she was probably just a few months old. Now she's in her own pen. You can't get close to her anymore because she obviously doesn't know where she's stepping, and it would be very easy for her to step on someone. But she's in a barn, and if you go up to the fence where she is and you call her, she'll often come out of the barn. And then a couple of years ago, they got a calf to keep her company, who's pretty much full grown now as well. Next slide, please. So reason four to visit Asheville is just the fun and entertainment here. It is a huge vacation destination. There's really no um, off season, maybe January and February, but I still do see a lot of tourists here then. It's kind of become very popular for bachelor and bachelorette parties. Um, because of this, I do have to say the hotels are quite expensive for a city of this size. But I do know that there are a lot of Airbnbs available. And I forgot to mention, we do have an airport here. It's pretty small. There's maybe, I think there's only 8 gates right now, but it's actually the second fastest growing airport in the US. Um, so there's some nonstop connections to cities like Dallas, Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York, and then and maybe some places in Florida. Other than that, you pretty much have to connect somewhere, but it's just an adorable airport. I really like flying in and out of there. No hassles whatsoever. Next slide, please. So Asheville has the most breweries per capita in the US. I unfortunately cannot stand the taste of beer, but I like hanging out at the breweries. They normally have really nice outdoor spaces. They're very family friendly. Um, there's board games and outdoor games that you could play. So there's about 20 local craft beer breweries, and then the national brewers of Sierra Nevada and New Belgium have locations here, and they give tours. And then we have Ginger's Revenge, which is an alcoholic ginger beer. They have, I think, I don't know, 6 or 7 flavors. Um, we have Bold Rock, which is a hard cider. They've also got loads of flavors of hard cider. And then one really cool place is called Ben's Tune Up. It's a sake brewery, and it's in a space that had been like, I don't know, a mechanic's garage or something. So it's kind of indoor outdoor. They put loads of plants in there, and there's different sections. And for some reason they have so the food is kind of Asian fusion, and they have a ton of vegan options, which is really great. Next slide, please. Um, there's a terrific live music scene here. So there's a lot of opportunities to hear bluegrass music that's kind of contemporary. There's a mountain dance and folk festival that takes place in the summer. It's the nation's oldest folk festival. It started in 1928. And in the summer, on Friday nights in downtown Asheville, they have something called Shindig on the Green. It's outside, it's free, and it's basically folk music with dancing. That's really fun to watch. And then there's a lot of very unique musical venues. A lot of them are indoor, outdoor. There's this one place called Salvage Station that's located right on the river, and the tickets for there are not very expensive. And then there's lots of free music that's available at the breweries. And also in downtown Asheville, year round, there's something called the Friday Night Drum Circle that started over 20 years ago. Um, so they have regulars that are there with their drums, but then anybody's welcome to bring their own drum and play as well. Next slide, please. So that's a photo of this salvage station, which is on the river. Um, they've got like a permanent food truck there that has lots of great vegan options. Next slide, please. That's a photo of the drum circle. That definitely looks like it's in the summer because it's pretty crowded. Next slide, please. So then we have the River Arts District, which I would say is the most up and coming area of Asheville now. Um, there's over 200 artist studios and galleries. The neighborhood is right next to the French Broad River. There's a lot of warehouses and mill buildings, and then scattered throughout restaurants, coffee shops, and breweries. A friend of mine just opened a little vegan store. So this group of people took one of these old warehouses, cleaned it up inside, and they made about maybe 60 different artist stalls. So there's some new art that's being sold. There's some vintage things. It's just, I went for the first time yesterday. It just opened about a week ago. Um, just a really nice variety of items and all price ranges. And then it just happened that they were only going to allow kind of one stall to have food there, and this little vegan shop was chosen. So if somebody wants to have a snack there, they're forced to have like a hummus wrap or a tempeh sandwich or something like that, or some vegan baked goods. And also in this little vegan shop, it's just basically local Asheville vegans that are making things by hand. So I was really impressed with it. And then also in the River Arts District, there's a lot of brand new biking and walking trails along the river that are being created. And eventually they're all going to be connecting, and it's going to be, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 miles long. Next slide, please. So this is just a photo of one of the old mill buildings that's been turned into studios. There's also a ton of, of street murals. Next slide, please. Here's some of the new walking and biking trails. Next slide, please. So the fifth reason to visit Asheville would be for nature and outdoor activities. Next slide, please. Um, One of the entrances to Great Smoky Mountains National Park is just an hour from Asheville. This is the most visited national park in the US. It's free to enter always. It's probably also the most crowded national park, um, but it's huge. I mean, I don't, not every part of it is crowded all the time, and it's an hour from Asheville. Next slide, please. So this is just a photo of the national park in Tennessee. So this would be the very eastern part of Tennessee. Next slide, please. And then right side of Asheville, or kind of surrounding Asheville in some parts, is Pisgah National Forest. This is one of the first national forests in the eastern US, and a lot of research is done there. There's something called the Cradle of Forestry. That was the site of the first school of forestry in the US, and it's enormous. It's over 500,000 acres. Next slide, please. That's just a photo of the forest, part of the forest. Next slide, please. Then there's pretty much right next to Pisgah National Forest is DuPont State Forest. That has 6 major waterfalls and 4 lakes. There's a really nice half-day hike where you could see 3 really substantial waterfalls within a couple of hours. And it offers mountain biking, hiking, swimming, kayaking, and entrance is free. They don't even charge for parking there, as far as I know. Next slide, please. So this is one of the 3 major waterfalls that's in DuPont State Forest. So I just wanted to, that pretty much wraps up the presentation, but I wanted to mention that we'll be having a tour of Asheville in June, from a week from June 11th to June 18th. And I would say will be partaking of all the activities that I talked about for the most part. But this is going to be a whole food, plant-based, no oil tour. So we actually will not be going to any of the restaurants in Asheville. We've rented a house at the top of a mountain with a gorgeous view, and we'll be bringing in a chef, and all the meals will be made at the house. And he'll pack bagged lunches for us when we're out sightseeing and going on our activities.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kim. This was so interesting. I've known that Asheville has become quite a hip destination, but I just didn't realize just how vegan friendly it was. It's so cool, and you're so
Yeah,
lucky to live there.
it's amazing. I mean, like I said, I've lived in big cities, but I think that in some ways, big cities, they can prevent people from getting together. There's a lot of hassles with people being spread out and a lot of traffic, but I just find the lifestyle in Asheville is so easy, and it just makes it really easy to get together with people and to plan events and things.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure people are going to be very interested to put Asheville on their bucket list and maybe join one of your tours. If they wanted to find out some more information about what it is that you do, what would be a good way to do that?
So the best way would be to just go to my website, which is vegjohnsonjourneys.com. And the tours are listed on there. The small group tours are listed on there. And then there's also a page for the Asheville Vegan Food Tour.
Fantastic. And I think you have a few little giveaways and exclusive offers connected with this summit. Can you talk a little bit about those just so that people don't miss out?
Yeah, so for the general summit, I have just kind of an e-guide about 100 tips for vegan travel. That's mostly about my international travel and a lot of tips. And then, like I said, if people want to contact me for the Asheville guide, I'm happy to email that to them.
Fantastic. All right. So, Kim, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off for this session?
I think that's it. I would just encourage people to come here. I love sharing it. Anybody can feel free to contact me if they have questions or want more information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And listeners, just so you know, this recording will be available until 5 days after the summit ends. So if you want to access this again or take some notes, you're very welcome to do that up until about the 5th of February. And I want to thank you, Kim, so much for joining us on the Traveling in a New Vegan World Summit. And thank you to everybody who is watching. And hope to see you in the next session.
Thanks, Bridie.